The Visitor. Lena had always loved the quiet of the old farmhouse. Nestled at the edge of a dense forest, it was a retreat from her busy life in the city. She had spent weekends there for years, reading, hiking, or just sitting by the fire, watching the flames flicker in the hearth. The house had a strange charm, but it was also a bit eerie, its wooden beams creaking with the wind, the walls whispering memories of decades long gone. One Saturday afternoon, after a long walk through the forest, Lena returned to find the place unusually still. The silence felt thicker than usual, as if the air itself had stopped moving. She shrugged it off, thinking it was just the calm after a storm. The wind outside howled, rattling the windows as she prepared dinner. The house groaned in protest with every gust, but Lena had grown used to it. She set the table and made a cup of tea, the only sounds the soft crackle of the fire and the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. But then, just as she was about to sit down, she heard a faint knock at the door. Knock, knock. Lena froze. She hadn't expected anyone. No one knew she was here this weekend. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the only visitors she ever had were delivery people who left packages at the foot of the driveway. Another knock, a little louder this time. It was strange, but it didn't sound like someone in distress, more like a casual visitor tapping at the door, waiting patiently. Her heartbeat quickened, but she told herself it was nothing to worry about. Maybe a hiker had gotten lost in the woods. She walked to the door, peered through the peephole, and saw nothing. Only the dark, empty porch. The wind howled again, but there was no sign of anyone. Confused, she opened the door anyway. No one. Just the empty, moonlit porch. Lena stepped outside, her breath turning to mist in the cold night air. She scanned the dark yard, the surrounding trees swaying ominously in the breeze. It was quiet. Too quiet. No one was there. The knocking stopped. A strange, uneasy feeling crept up her spine. She closed the door, locking it firmly behind her, and stood there for a moment, listening. Silence. She couldn't shake the sensation that something was wrong, but she convinced herself it was just nerves. Returning to the kitchen, Lena tried to shake off the unease and sat back down at the table. But then as she sipped her tea, something caught her eye. It was a movement, a flicker of something in the window. Lena's stomach dropped. She turned slowly toward the glass, her heart pounding. There, standing just outside the window, was a figure. It was only a shadow, but its outline was unmistakable, tall, thin, and unnaturally still. The shape had no discernible features, just a vague humanoid form that seemed to blur in and out of focus. The figure wasn't moving, but Lena could feel its presence pressing against the glass. She jumped to her feet, knocking over her teacup. Her pulse raced as she rushed to the window and threw back the curtains. But there was nothing. The yard was empty again. Lena's hands trembled as she pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Her breath fogged up the window and she wiped it away, still searching the darkness. And then she saw it again. The same figure, standing at the far edge of the yard near the trees, but this time it was closer, much closer. Her heart skipped a beat. Lena backed away from the window. She was starting to panic now. What was going on? Was she imagining things? The knocking came again. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. Her breath hitched as she turned toward the door. It sounded like it was coming from the back of the house, but how? She grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy iron candlestick, and cautiously approached the back door. It was unlocked as she had left it. The sound of the knocking grew louder, more insistent. Lena opened the door slowly, her mind racing. The yard was empty, again. The trees stood still, their long shadows stretching across the grass. But then she heard it. A low whisper. "Come out, Lena." Her blood ran cold. The voice was clear, but it wasn't hers. It wasn't anyone she knew. The whisper came from the woods, just beyond the yard. She stood there frozen, the door ajar behind her, staring into the thick darkness. The whisper grew louder. "Come out, Lena." And then, as if the very earth itself had opened up, something stepped out from the trees. It wasn't a person or anything she could recognize. It was a shape, a blur, an outline that moved with an unnatural, jerky grace. Its limbs were too long, its head too large, its eyes, if they could even be called that, were empty pits, black and hollow, staring directly at her with an intensity that made her insides churn. Lena couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. She was trapped, pinned by the sight of the thing, unable to tear her gaze away. It was like it had always been there, waiting for her, Watch.